Our house flipping version is now on 5.5. I literally just did an update and a new video earlier this week and then stumbled on something and had to make another improvement. So now I'm on version 5.5 and I'm redoing the video. Plus in the 5.4, I didn't cover the timeline. So I'll make sure I cover it this time. So we're just going to go through it from scratch as if you'd never saw it, even if you just saw the video 5.4. So this is our home and shortcut panel. Essentially, this is a tool for just navigating the workbook a little faster and a little smoother. It's got built-in pre-linked shortcut buttons, and these go to the pre-existing tabs. Then you've got some custom buttons as well. And if you add tabs or add property tabs as an example, which you can do, you could link those if you wanted to make it easy. And then you could change the links as you go through and add more properties in the future. So the pre-existing, to show you kind of how it works, if I select dashboard, it takes me to the dashboard, and you'll notice in the very top left of all tabs, there's now a little small circle home button, and basically that will take me back home. So go to partner summary, takes me back. I can go to inspection checklist, again, takes me back home. So rather than kind of scrolling through the tabs, we're putting this in some pro products just to, again, really streamline the workflow. As far as the custom buttons go, I have a tutorial for kind of how to set those up. I'm not going to explain it now, but a 2 to 3 minute video if you want to go through that and set these up. So next we'll go through the dashboard. So this is essentially your metrics, everything from the workbook as you use it, not everything. The things on the property tabs, all the inputs will ultimately flow into here. So I've only have a couple property tabs set up right this second, and you'll see that 2 showing, with 1 actually has full set of data in it, and that's rolling through the dashboard. You can choose currencies. We've got 4 different ones you can choose from in case you're not from the US. And then your profit trend start date is just referring to this chart on the far right. So this is total profits by month, and it's a 12-month period, and you can select the first month in that period. So if you are using this workbook and it takes you a couple years, 3 years, 4 years to flip 25 properties, you can choose this 12-month period and look at your revenue for any of those 12 months. The partner summary we'll come back to. Don't let me forget that. Data table I'll come back to as well. So supplier list, there's been a slight change since 5.4, and it is around the supplier list. So this is for you to manage your subcontractors, contractor suppliers, etc. And you can list them all here in you can list all the details here, and the key input is what in the far left column. So this is the company name, contractor name, etc. And this is actually going to flow into your property tabs, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But the rest of this information is optional. So your addresses, professional supplier type, contact, and phone number. You just fill the table out, and I think you got up to 100 in here that you can add. Now, next is the partner list, and this is really similar. It's going to turn into a drop down that you can use, and these names you can later select in your partner summary, which I'll cover. They also show up in the offer review. But ultimately, these are your partners and investors, anybody you're splitting, potentially splitting profits with or splitting doing the work with on the flips. Next is your inspection checklist. So this is just a pretty simple kind of checklist for you to kind of print and be able to manage for anything you might standard look at on your house flips. It's pre-filled with a bunch of things. You can take it out, update it with what you want. Again, any information, I'll say this, any information in this workbook that's pre-filled out, you can edit. It's not designed to stay that way. It's just example information within the workbook. One thing you'll notice, I do have a column in the checklist that says professional required. And it's just to say, hey, look, you're acknowledging, I normally inspect this myself, or if it's a yes, look, we normally call somebody for that. And maybe it's, maybe it's one of your partners or somebody or not partner, but your contractors or something that you call to do that, or an actual professional, somebody that does inspections. But either way, it's just a quick, easy way for you to kind of visualize and know if you have to call somebody for that inspection. Okay, the next is the ROI assessment, and now we'll get into a little more detail as we go through the tab. The previous ones are pretty straightforward. Now it's going to get a little busier. So the front end ROI assessment, you will do this before you even purchase the property. So you do this kind of up front just to check, is it worth you buying or not. So this is your profit percentage goal. I got set for 20%. And then after repair values. So after you flip and do your renovations, what do you think it's going to be worth? And then you get an estimated total flip cost, which comes from all your information below. And then you got assessment results, which I'll walk through. First, we're going to cover these cost breakdowns. So you got projected cost, so the purchase price, and then additional acquisition and carrying costs. So whatever you paid in process of buying the property, maybe you paid some closing costs, and then you got carrying costs that you're going to have while you have the property. What are your buyer concessions that you might be willing to give up when you come to selling the property? So when the buyer comes and say, hey, I want this and this paid for, what do you estimate that you normally might give up as part of the sale? Selling expenses, so marketing, putting furniture in the house, whatever, stuff like that. Then you got total sale commissions paid, so this is any agent or realtor fees. And then you've got a renovation cost, which this is automated, and it comes from this entire table here. So I've added some additional rows since 5.4, so 5.5 has a little more capacity at the bottom here. But this is your projected renovations. It's got a renovation contingency, which I've got set to 15%. Maybe you want it 10, maybe you want it 5, set it to whatever you want. And then you're going to plug in and kind of itemize, as far as I got utilities, home exterior, appliances, bathrooms, etc., and then some details within each of those categories, and then a projected dollar spend for each. And ultimately, whatever you populate in here is going to get multiplied by your contingency number for a total, right? So that's 17.9, and then the sum of all this is the 137,540. So in this case, your estimated flip costs are all these, which is your 317,790, and then your assessment results in this case would be, okay, you got a 20% goal, which is what you plugged in here, and against this ARV, this would be a $63,000 goal for profit. Your actual in this case is going to be 107.8, so that's telling you it's green. Okay, you're great, you're over your goal, and you're over your goal by 5.3% in this case. Now we also have a 70% rule calculator in here, and I'll show you how this works. But it says the max purchase price in this case is the 160,380. So your purchase price is a pass. So you're kind of green all over the board. This is a good flip. Now let's say number 160. So if I change this number, we go down to purchase price, and I change this to 161. That's going to flag it as red. So yeah, you got 23.9% profit, right? So that's still a good profit margin, but it's just highlighting some additional risk that your purchase price might be a little high for what you think the flip is worth, or what you can get out of the flip. So I'll put that back the way it was. But ultimately, that's how that works. And then if you get some red, you have to decide whether you still want to make the flip or not. Is it worth the risk to you? And then we'll go into, I'm going to come back to the timeline. I'll try not to forget that this time, because I didn't cover it last time, but I'll try not to forget. So we're going to kind of go in order. So first I do ROI assessment in order, and also I didn't cover it. Well, we'll do it this way. So first you'll do ROI assessment, and then in order to get this carrying cost number in here, we actually have a carrying cost calculator. So it's just a breakdown, and I added some features on here too, actually, in this latest revision. So you've got the finance calculator, which did have that before, but I highlighted some things in blue and made some stuff stand out. So your finance calculator is just to say, okay, if you're borrowing money to pay for the flip, what's your estimated monthly interest? Because your monthly payment is going to end up going back into the property value, and you're going to get it back when you sell. Everything but the interest in that term. So when you're calculating your carrying costs, don't take a hit on the total payment because you're getting that back. But your interest you're going to pay in for each month, you're going to lose. You ain't getting that back. So in this case, we'll break it down. So you got financing, in this case, interest only. So that's the 737. I plugged it in there. This is all just manual input. And taxes, insurance, etc., glass, water, yard maintenance, whatever you want to put. And then you've got a date start and a date end. And what this is going to do is, based on these dates you plug in of when you think all these things are going to be on and then off, and you're no longer paying for them, it's going to calendarize it, and then it's going to total it, and then you're going to get a total carrying cost up here. So pretty easy, and then this number would ultimately go into your ROI assessment. So really you could do the carrying cost first, or you could kind of rough it out for carrying costs, throw a number in your just best guess, and then once you get the property, you actually calculate this, and then you would plug it into your property tab, which we'll go to next. So remember, we'll come back to the timeline. So on the property tab, this looks detailed. It looks really busy. It's not that bad. It does have a lot of information in it, but we'll just work through it as we normally would. So you'll start top left, and this is your property name. So, name it something simple and cut and dry, and what it's going to do is show up in the headers, and then it's going to show up in your data table. It's going to show up on your dashboard. So like as a shortcut here, the name shows up down here in your chart. Let me go back to that property tab. So these names will populate in several places. It'll be in your drop-down menus and some of the other tabs that you can choose from. As an example, the carrying cost here, select property, you're choosing from those property names that you plug into the property tabs. Now, total renovation budget is just renovation budget. That's not your flip budget. So it's the only intent of this is you're setting a target for yourself for the total renovation. So let's say you did the ROI assessment and you got a total figure here. Renovation cost is the 137.5. Well, then you might would come back in, and when you go to set up the actual property tab, you set that to the 137.5. And that's your goal. And that's all. Its only intent is for your actual renovation costs that sum up over here to the right. That's going to flag it red or green. Are you under budget or are you over budget? That's the purpose of the number here. You've got renovation contingency. So this is the 15%. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of do the same thing as the ROI, but it's going to auto-populate down here for this, 17,940. So in this case, I basically copied over those same numbers and inputs from the ROI assessment. So that's why these numbers are exactly the same. It's the same information. But that's the contingency is the 17.9 because I plugged in 15% up here. After repair value, is the 425,600, and then home square feet. And this gives you basically a profit per square foot. You'll want that information. You'll pay your price per square foot, what you pay, and then your profit per square foot. So price per square foot, I think that's based on the price per square foot is the total cost, the 425, and then your profit is what you had left. All right, so then you'll go into your itemized budget spend, projected and actual. So we'll just work our way down. So you got acquisition and carrying costs. So you got purchase price, closing costs, etc. And then for each of these, I'm going to kind of work down the table, and we're going to go through it slow, but you've got a projected, actual, and variance, which I'll explain here in a little more detail as we get into maybe an example. But just know projected is where you're going to start. Then as you update and track your detailed spending, you can come in and update actual. It's optional to do that. You don't have to do that. But you can update actual if you want to, and then it will show you your variance. So if you're working on improving how well you budget for your flips, this is a good tool to use. It's not just projected, but you need to fill out at least projected. You need to at least put something in here because that's how it's going to track and look at all your costs and your profit information. So you got to plug something, but actual is going to be optional. Now, the next one is home selling expenses. I got staging, marketing, photography, and I got another buyer concessions, so closing costs, maybe something else. realtor agent fees, sale commissions. Now I have a neat tool for this. So this is kind of a calculation based on the total cost of the house and what percentage you might pay. So with the 425, 600, which I've got, I'm gonna sidestep on where I was going with that for just a second. But the 425, 600, I've got a note in here. So you'll estimate this up front, and then once you do your renovations and you have your appraisal and all that, you can update this number. You're going to want this number as accurate as you can once you're all said and done. So just estimate it up front and then correct it later. Now, or whatever, or change it to wherever you set your sale price to. Now, from this number, you've got a little calculator over here, which is what I was getting to, was your seller commissions calculator. So I plug in, hey, I know I'm paying 5% in total, for whatever the case is selling the house, and that total is 21,280, which I would come back down, and that 10.7 is way low. So this would be 21,280. But I'm leaving a number. This is all just an example. Remember, all this information pre-filled can be taken out and edited. It's just added just as an example. And then I've got, so let me walk you through how the projected versus actual. So you'll notice acquisition cost 155, right? Now if I come into closing costs, let's pretend we'll do it this way first. So 155, so if I change this to 150,000, or I put in 150, not change it, but put 150 in for actual. So my acquisition cost up here now is going to see 150, and my variance is positive 5,000. So I beat my target by $5,000. Now if I go the other direction, 160, again, this was going to show 160,000, but I was upside down. I missed by 5,000. I'll change that back to a 0. And even if, so let's say there was a line item that you didn't plan, you planned $0 for. So just like this, projected closing costs, or we'll say other was 0. But I had some other expenses I didn't plan for, they ended up being 6,000. So now you'll notice that jumped to 161 because I was upside down 6,000 on just dollars I didn't plan for. See how that works? But so the variance tool it's kind of a neat feature to see across everything. Hey, am I over or under? And it's especially neat or especially beneficial on the renovation items because that's where you're probably going to have the most pluses and minuses. But it works all the way down. So right, 15,000. Renovation is 137,540. So let's say this was actually 20,000. Right. So 15. So I was off by 5. Right, upside down by 5. Let's see what renovation shows. So renovation cost is 142, right? Because I was over by the 5,000. So works like it's supposed to. So let's see, take that to a 0. I want to try that. I want to look at something else again. Well, I'm just playing. Yeah, okay. That's what it's doing what it's supposed to. Okay, great. So then let's see. That covers this. So again, flow is fill out projected, use my detailed expense, update actual, and then you'll come back up here and update some other numbers that will come to that. So next is the detailed and expense tracking. So this it's not complicated, it's actually really easy, but it's just more columns and it's a little busier. So for every line item, so anything you spend money on, you can track. Everything is preset. First thing I'm gonna note is everything is preset as other expense, because it simply is just an expense unless you tag it as something else using this column, and I'll show you what that is. So for date, plug in the date, then you got supplier contractor. You don't have to use these columns, but they have benefit, and I'll show you how. So in this case, supplier contractor, if I hit drop down, it's going to pull from my supplier list. And then renovation category, I can select one of these categories. And this list here comes directly, so what I can choose from, you'll notice there's a bunch of options. These options are directly within my renovation categories. I'm noticing something I need to fix maybe. because I don't have the selling cost. There's some other things I don't have in here. Maybe I need to add that. Not mission critical. I really just built that for the renovation expenses, but you could potentially, these other categories could be in there, but it's okay. So for now, I might make a change to that. You might even see it if you buy revision 5.5. I might not even rev it. I might just make some changes where this list is done a little different. But just know that right now it's based on your renovation category. So whatever you plug in here for categories, that's how it's going to be set up. So it pulls from that. And the reason it does that, I'm going to show you how. So show you why. So I'm not even going to date it. So as an example, let's come back here and add Hill Plumbing. So you'll notice so far I've got $3,500 for Hill Plumbing and then $649. And for every time I update or insert something in the row, I've got these 2 date calculators. So one is, so in this case, I got $41.49 spent to date by supplier contractor. So that's Hill Plumbing. So whatever row, whatever name I plug in, it's going to update and reflect that name for this row. So that's the $41.49 is $3,500 plus the $649. The renovation category, so it's showing $41.49 too because they're both bathroom. And then total to date is the total of all these numbers, which is the $7,549, which is what you see here. So as another example, let's do easy roofing. So, and that's a roofing category. So you see that? So roofing is $1,500. So it was previously $1,500. So that number hasn't changed. But because I typed in roofing, it says, oh, that's $1,500 you spent so far. And then let's do roofing, $1,500. So now if I add $1,000, hopefully these numbers are going to change by went up to $2,500. So I've spent $2,500 with easy roofing and $2,500 towards roofing in total. And I've spent $85.49 in all total expenses. So the purpose of that, and that little feature is, as I'm spending money here, it helps me kind of know what my totals are by my bucket. And it won't be specific to each line item, but it kind of gives you an idea of, hey, I've spent $30,000 in, or let's not use utilities, that'd be a bad example. Well, actually, potentially it could, right? So whether you're paying a utility company for a service, or in this case, you had to rewire the house, and that's a utility cost, you can capture that. But it just gives you some flexibility for tracking. That's the only intent. You don't even have to use those two. As an example, if you don't, if I don't even name anything and I come in here and plug in $2,000, it's just the total to date is gonna add up. So you don't have to use these columns at all. It's up to you. You have another description comment section over here where you can plug in details for whatever the expense was. So we'll change that back to 0. Now, the other column is paid in full. So there's some options. So again, everything is pre-tagged, these other expense, but you've got some choices here between, so like when it comes to paying contractors. So let's say the first time you paid the roofing company, I was just paying for the materials up front. And then it's a 2 week, 3 weeks, it's called a 3 week job for something they were doing. Then week 1, I paid for materials, and then week 1, the contractor got a draw. And then you got another draw, and then full payout on week 3, right? And what that allows you to do is just gives you some visibility and tracking to know when you've paid your contractors in full for a specific service. It's just a tag, just a visual tag for you. And it doesn't do anything else other than that. So now this is filled out. We've kind of updated, maybe you've updated some of the actual numbers. And technically, you only need to update actual if it's different. So I didn't tell you that before, but otherwise it's kind of a waste of effort because it's going to do the calcs either way. Now let's say you're ready to sell. So you've got the flip, you've done all the work, and you're ready to sell the house. So now you've got an offer review. So let's say you put the house on the market and you get an offer. So you actually have an offer review sheet in the same. You can select the property from the drop down. And when you select this, it's going to pull in all these costs from your projected, right? And actually it pulls it. It says projected. It technically isn't projected. It's going to be actual. It's going to be whatever you've got in the system. But all these numbers get pulled. So we go back to the property tab from up here. That's where these numbers come from. So we'll go back to the offer review. Now we'll step down through this. So you got current offer. Let's say they offered the $425,600. Estimated total cost, estimated total profit. So the total cost, $3,112,790, is all these numbers adding up here. And then you've got, let's just out of curiosity, because I think I had all the same numbers on the ROI assessment. So the 112,810, let's see, 317,790. I wonder if this is a little different. It probably is, because my totals are different here. What's the other one say? 312. Oh, I bet I had 5,000. Oops. I've got another 5,000 somewhere for carrying costs. Let's see if that's right. Property one. Well, yep. So carrying costs. So if I add 5,000, let's just do that. Let's see. So I got 107.8. I just want to see if these numbers come out the same. Yep, 107,810. So that's the offer, and then ROI assessment. Yep, 107,810. Okay, just doing a math check. Total flip cost 317,790. 317,790. Okay, just making sure. Make sure I didn't mess something up in the last revision. So then you've got estimated total profits to 107,810. So 25.3%. And you're just green because it's not red. Basically, if it was negative and you had negative profit, it'd be red. As an example, this is a formula, so don't touch this. Don't edit this. But if I made this -1, oh man, it's locked. Okay, I'm not going to lock it. But if this was negative, I tell you what I can probably do. Okay, let's do this. I'll cheat to 25,600. There you go. My profit's negative. So we'll undo that. Okay, now the next thing is profit breakdown. So in the event that you have multiple partners or you're flipping the house with somebody, maybe you get a split. So maybe Mike gets 50% and John gets 50. So in this case, we'll do 50, 50. So you each get $53,000, 54. We'll round up 54. So that's your profit split. And you can do that for up to 3 that I've got in here. And then additionally, we've already kind of covered this cost, but down here at the bottom, let's say John, in this case, is also the realtor. So he's going to get some of the selling commissions. So then out of the total commissions for, you got buyer and seller side. So out of the total commissions, he gets 50%. So Mike is going to earn 53.9, but John is going to get additional 53.75 out of the sale. So his total partner earnings as the realtor is 59,280. And this was just something we added because generally there's a lot of realtors that like to participate or that do a lot of house flipping. That's really it for the offer review. And then you'd come back in, let's say you sold, and then you're going to come back in, and I'm going to show you as an example and take these numbers out. So you'll see total profit and profit percentage of sales, say update sale value. And if I go back to my dashboard, oops, yeah, we'll do it this way. See, there's no numbers in here. Nothing's flowing through. So I'm going to go back to that property tab. And it's because I don't have a sale value and sale date. So in order for everything to flow through, especially your profit tracking and revenue tracking, you got to have dates in here. So I'll hit undo. So you notice I put a sale date. This went red. It's just flagging me to say, hey, look, you've got a date in. You've got to put a value in. So we sold the house 815 and sold it for 425. So here's all my profit calcs. And you'll notice the 17810 matches the ROI assessment and matches the offer review. So everything's flowing through identical based on the inputs. And then one other thing too, so if you plug in a sale value and don't plug in a date, it's going to flag it red for the same reason, because both of those numbers are important for the revenue tracking. Because if I take the date out, if I go back to the dashboard here, so you'll see I've got numbers here. They're flowing through. I got percentages in my chart for that property, but I've got no revenue by month. And if I go back to property one, I'll put that date back in and go back to my dashboard. See, now for August, it's showing that profit in that month. Okay, so that's the offer review. Oh, timeline. I don't forget timeline. So while you're in the middle of flipping, or once you've got your budget and all that set up, and okay, now I'm planning my flip, or even technically before, you could do the ROI assessment before you even add it in here, set up a timeline. Depends on how much detail you want to go to. But I've got inspection, purchase, renovations. So you set the timeline up for wherever in the process of the flip that you want to have it. But same kind of thing, you've got a drop down for your property that you can choose from. And remember, so if you're setting the timeline up before, so before I even inspect, you may not have a property name to pull from, because this comes from an active property tab. So it depends on your order of operations whether this is going to be beneficial for you or not. Just to name it. And the only reason to name it populates up here, and then you can print it out. But that's up to you. Depends on the order of how you do things. So then you've got your key milestone, and you've got a few you can plug in here. And then target start date, target end date, and then you got an actual end date. So from your target start and end, you get target days, and that's going to be your plan. So your dark blue is your plan time. And then your actual end date, so you plug in when you actually ended, and that step was done, and that's going to be your blue. So you're going to see your plan versus actual. So dark blue, I planned, looks like roughly 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 full weeks. And then I've got, maybe I used up a week. So you were a little fast on that timeline. And this isn't going to be a perfect representation. It's not by day. It looks like I've got it set by 7-day periods. So the date it's going to be as close as I can, as far as setting up a Gantt chart like this. But it just gives you a nice visual to say, hey, look, I'm red, green. So if you're continuously late on some things, the next flip, you might put a little more time in for yourself. And that way you're just learning on time. And then you can kind of learn too from the dates of, if you're living on this income, when to expect that income and be a little more accurate, so to plan better for it, in your own personal budget. All right, and the other thing I didn't cover yet was the partner summary. So here's your offer review. Again, I've got the names plugged in. So let's say you sold, and this is exactly how things went. Then I would come back into my partner summary here, and I've got Mike Smith. I can put him in for 50. And then, so you see why that went red, because I'm only showing 50%. It's looking for 100, so to make sure you account for all the profit dollars. And then I've got, let's see, John Coffey, and I'll set him up for 50%. And there you go, I'm green, and that's all the dollars accounted for. And it's saying total profit is 160, which is interesting to me. Property dashboard, property name. I'm going to have to look at this while you're sitting here. 80,000. Let's see, is this Acton Road? 107. Let's look at that. So if I go to data table, total profit 107. Where's it getting to 160? Oh, so that's an error. I got to fix that. It'll be correct by the time you buy the file. I'll correct it in the next 10 minutes and upload it, and it'll make it right. But that's just a mistake on my side. I'm pulling from the wrong. It says profit percentage, so I'll have to double check. But this number should be pulled from this. Easy fix on my side. So that happens. I do that all the time. If you see stuff like that when you buy a workbook from me, send me a message, ask questions, say, hey, look, something doesn't look right. I can fix it. and I'll correct my file. I make a lot of changes and improvements, so I do it all the time. I wish I'd say I was perfect, but I don't catch everything. But that's easy correction. But that's how the partner summary works either way, is it gives you a nice snapshot by property of who got what and how much and etc. And you can share that with your partners if you wanted to later. But that's essentially it. The data table, just as I didn't talk about this, but it really doesn't. This is a hands-off tab. You don't do anything with it, but it pulls this. The intent of this tab is to pull all the information into one table from every property tab that you put in the workbook, up to 25. So I didn't cover the link feature. I guess I'll cover it because I'm here. So again, this will let you link up to 25 of these property tabs to this data table. Now, I only have 2 properties in the workbook right this second. You can basically right click, make a copy of the tab. I've got videos and tutorials for how to do that. And then if I make a copy, let's say the property template, and name it property 3, it's going to automatically link to this property 3 row. Now, to show you kind of real quick, adding tabs that will link to your data table and dashboard. It's like a 2 to 3 minute tutorial to do that. Super easy to do. But once you've done that, let's say you use this workbook and you're past the 25, way past the 25. Well, it doesn't mean you can't continue to link your new flips to this table. You can. You can either rename tabs, or I can go in, so as an example, so property 1, see link to dashboard, which I have a tutorial on. Again, it's the same as the other link. But if I hit no, nothing changed in this tab. Nothing at all. But if I go to my data table, it now doesn't see it. It says link property tab. So I could essentially I can have 200 property tabs in this workbook, and I can link whichever ones I want to link to this table. And there's another tutorial. So one is adding tabs that will link. The other is editing tab names. In between these two, it will basically show you how to, oops, where's the data table? It will show you how to, if you go over 25, it'll show you how to link whatever you want to this table. So I'm going to go back to that and go to property 1, link to dashboard, yes. And if I go back to that data table, it's all here. But that's really it. You got any questions? Again, shoot us a message. If you see something funny, let us know. We can fix it. And thanks for watching.